I'm the storyteller, and my stories must be told. I have many stories, tales for both the young and old. I have many voices to describe many places. Many names have I, and many faces. In Russia I am Ivan, in Sweden I am Jan. In Germany I'm Johann, in America I'm John. From my many travels I have gathered these tales to teach you good sense when all else fails. Sometimes there are tears, sometimes there is laughter, but always are happily ever after.
Long ago and far away in a poor and mountainous country where men found it very hard to make even a poor living from the barren soil, there once lived an old man who had 3 sons, Manuel, Pedro, and Juanito, who was the youngest. Manuel and Pedro were very clever, but they were also very lazy. They were always so busy concocting clever schemes to make themselves rich that they didn't have any time to work on their father's poor farm, while Juanito worked from morning till night. "What will happen to my 3 boys when I am gone?" the old man sighed to himself. "They are clever, fine lads, but only Juanito has any aptitude for steady work." One day, the 2 eldest sons decided to take the matter into their own hands. "Father," they told the old man, "the farm cannot support all of us, as you yourself know. We want to make our own way into the great wide world. We are sure we shall make our fortunes there. Give us your blessing. Let us go." The old man knew his son spoke the truth and finally, sadly, agreed to their request. "But," he insisted, "on one condition. You must take Juanito with you. It is only fair that he is given the same chance as you." So saying, he called the youngest boy to his side and told him what had been decided. When Juanito heard what his father had to say, he was very reluctant to leave the farm and go into the wide world with his brothers. "What will happen to you, father?" he cried. "What will happen to the farm?" But his father insisted. Further, he told his boys he wouldn't let them go off empty-handed. "I have saved all these years for this moment," he told the 3 lads. "Behold, I have a silver coin for each of you, my dear sons. This money will help you to find your fortunes and protect you from poverty." The 3 lads were astonished their father had managed to save this money, but he wouldn't listen to their thanks. "Now you have everything I possess," he told them. "Go, and God be with you in your quest for fortune." So they left without any further delay, the 2 eldest wondering what adventures they would encounter, Juanito wondering who would look after the farm now he had gone. On and on they stumbled through the rough countryside. The track they followed was narrow and steep, and they seemed to travel ever deeper into wild country without any sign of civilization. At last, after they had been traveling for some hours, they decided to rest under a tree and plan what to do next, for it seemed to those weary travellers that there was not a town or village for miles around. Manuel, the eldest, was all for taking a road that stretched out ahead, due north. But the other two disagreed. They thought that the road behind them, which went due west, looked much more promising. Manuel, however, wouldn't hear of it. "That is the way for me," he declared. "I just feel it in my bones. That's my lucky road. That's the one which will lead me to my fortune." So it was agreed. But before Manuel departed, the three brothers agreed that, come what may, they would all meet again at the same spot in exactly 1 year's time and tell each other of their adventures. Off Manuel strode with hardly a backward glance at his two younger brothers. They too travelled on for a little while, but it wasn't very long before they came to a fork in the road, where they agreed to separate. Pedro to take the left fork, Juanito the right. They said farewell fondly, wished each other luck, and off they went, each one thinking that his road was the likeliest to lead to fame and fortune. Manuel had travelled no distance at all when he saw a horse by the roadside, and close by were 3 men. The party looked friendly enough and invited him to join them, which he readily did, and received a very rough welcome. They were a band of robbers made desperate by poverty, who preyed on unwary travellers such as Manuel. It certainly didn't take them long to find his trusty knife and his precious silver coin. Quick as a flash, they had robbed him, trussed him up like a chicken, and scuttled off, before Manuel could properly cry help. What could Manuel do? It didn't take him very long to free himself, and since he was now penniless, he decided he could do no worse than follow after the robbers and see if he could somehow retrieve his silver coin. He followed their tracks to a camp high in the hills and found them arguing furiously about the silver coin and blaming the leader because they had no food. Quietly, Manuel slipped away. He knew he could catch some food. It wasn't long before he was back again with a fat rabbit. "What's the point of owning a silver coin if you've nothing to eat?" he asked them. "Look, I am as poor as any of you. Let me join your band and learn how to be a thief. I promise you, you won't regret it if you let me join you." Well, they admired his audacity, and after all, 4 in a robber band might be better than 3, especially if the 4th was someone who could catch food. So it was agreed, and as there is honour among thieves, the first thing they did was to return his knife to him, although the silver coin had disappeared into the common purse. Pedro, meanwhile, had had a much longer journey, but at last he arrived at a small village where he saw the most amazing sight. An old woman holding a beautiful crystal ball into which she stared intently, while a crowd of villagers listened to her every word. "I can see everything that happens in the whole world in my crystal ball," she told Pedro. "Nothing is hidden from me when I gaze into its milky depths. But I am too old and no longer need to know what is going on outside this village. I am willing to sell you this crystal ball for the 1 silver coin you have in your purse, the one your father gave you." Well, of course, that was exactly what Pedro had, and he felt it would be extremely useful to know everything that was going on in the whole world. Without further ado, the bargain was struck to everyone's satisfaction. The old woman had her silver coin. Pedro had his miraculous crystal ball. As for young Juanito, well, he too at last came to a small town, hot, weary, footsore, and not a little homesick. "I can't go on wandering like a beggar through the world," he thought. "I must try and find a man who will teach me an honest trade." No sooner had he made his decision when he came across the town's coppersmith, beating out some fine copperware for the king's palace. But when Juanito asked him if he needed a workman, the coppersmith replied, "I barely make enough to keep myself. If I took on an apprentice, he would have to pay his way while he learnt this craft." "I can pay you a silver coin," Juanito cried eagerly, "and I promise that you will find me very hard-working, for I am determined to learn an honest trade." So each brother had found a livelihood to suit him. Pedro had his crystal ball, in which he could see the whole world, and he shared this knowledge with any who would pay for it. Juanito industriously learnt to beat metal into the finest pieces, much to the smith's delight. Manuel became so successful as a robber that he soon became the leader. Each brother thought of the amazing stories he would tell the others when they met again, and indeed the year passed in no time at all. Juanito was the first to arrive back at the spot where he had last seen his 2 brothers together, and although Manuel leapt on him in a rather unexpected fashion, as befitted his new profession, the 2 were delighted to see each other. "Where's that useless brother of ours, Pedro?" cried Manuel. "Let's not wait for him, but tell me, my honest brother, what dull work you've been up to these past months." Just then who should appear but Pedro, looking very fine indeed, so fine that the others didn't recognize him at first. "I know precisely what has befallen you 2, he boasted. "You have become a metalsmith, and you have become a robber. I've done far better than either of you." "Behold my beauteous, wondrous crystal ball, in which I can see the whole world." "Come on, brother, tell us what you can see that we can't," Manuel scoffed. "That looks just like any old crystal ball to me." Pedro stared intently into its milky depths and saw there a fine castle. He also saw a beautiful girl in a room of the castle, sadly combing her hair. He described in detail what he had seen to his brothers, dwelling particularly on the girl's beauty. He looked once more and saw that a villainous knight held the girl prisoner. "Why," he cried, "it's the Infanta, the king's daughter. She has been captured by the wicked Black Knight who now holds her in his castle. Brothers, there will be a reward for us all if we can rescue her. Besides, she is very beautiful." The brothers agreed to work together to rescue the hapless princess, each one using his own special skills. Manuel, of course, as befitted a master thief, had the task of getting everyone into the castle. Pedro was to use his crystal ball to locate the exact room where the princess was imprisoned, while Juanito, who now knew exactly how locks and keys worked, was to open the locked doors of her prison. It was a great adventure. Manuel was soon able to show his two brothers how much he had learnt. Difficult and dangerous as the climb was, he finally scaled the castle battlements. Once at the top, he threw a stout rope down to his brothers. Then each of them climbed up to join him. Pedro's crystal ball had revealed that the princess's room was deep in the castle and heavily guarded. "I'll show you how to overcome the guards," Manuel promised. "You just leave this side of the business to me." He was quickly able to demonstrate how to put a guard to sleep for a very long time. They hurried along passages, down corridors, up stairways. The castle was like a maze, but at last they reached the final passage that led to the princess's room. Manuel again showed his skill against the guards. Juanito very quickly unlocked the heavy door. Not surprisingly, the princess was most alarmed at the sight of these strange intruders, but they very soon persuaded her that they had come to rescue her and meant her no harm. As quickly and quietly as they could, they retraced their steps back the way they had come. So many stairs, so many passages, each one full of danger, and they were very aware that the Black Knight would soon discover that the princess had gone. "This is witchcraft!" he cried. "This place is impregnable. She cannot escape. She will never find her way out." His guards, however, were unable to enlighten him as to what had happened. The Black Knight was sure that the princess could never leave the castle itself. He did not reckon with the three ingenious brothers who had rescued their princess, and who, very quickly, were clambering down the rope that led to freedom, leaving the Black Knight scouring his castle from the dungeons to the highest turrets. Danger still lay ahead of the fleeing party. Yes, they had escaped the castle, but could they still escape the Black Knight? All the transport they had managed to find to take the princess back to her father was a humble farm cart. In fury, the Black Knight rode off in hot pursuit. "She cannot have gone far," he cried. "I'll soon get her back." Further disaster struck the little band. The harness suddenly snapped, and Juanito set to with all his skill to mend it as quickly as possible. It wasn't fast enough to escape the Black Knight. This wicked man came thundering down the road in a cloud of dust, but barely paid any attention to a humble farm cart. He looked inside, but he was sure the princess would travel in much grander style, even when escaping. As far as the princess was concerned, this was the very best way to travel, knowing she was now safely on her way back to her father. And if the truth were told, she was also rather enjoying this adventure and the company of the three brothers, even although Manuel was a robber and Pedro a fortune-teller and Juanito nothing more than a humble coppersmith. Once they were back on the road, the journey seemed to take no time at all, as Pedro and Manuel swapped stories in the front, and the princess and Juanito chatted like old friends in the back. When they reached the royal palace, the princess hurried through to the chamber where her family waited anxiously for news of their missing child. They were afraid they would never see their darling daughter alive again. The delighted king declared, "My daughter will marry the man who rescued her." But which of the brothers had rescued her? Manuel the robber? Pedro the fortune-teller? Juanito the coppersmith? Well, my dear, then you must decide for yourself which one you wish to marry, the king told her. The princess had no doubts on this score. The one whom she liked the best by far was Juanito, the honest coppersmith. "That's all very well," said the king, "but Manuel and Pedro must be rewarded too. My two younger daughters are as beautiful as their sister," he told the brothers, "and I have been looking for handsome and clever husbands for them. Now I have found them. You, Manuel, may marry my middle daughter, and you, Pedro, my youngest. And everyone will get married together to celebrate this happy day." The poor farmer's 3 sons found their fortune at last, and their happiness with it.